Guys, we're back. Thank you so much for coming back out to the Connect. Shout out to Anderson Hydro for holding us here. Shout out to Kevin. Guys, I'm really excited to be back. And I also want to throw a special shout out to Legacy Farms for hosting us the past few months. Really dope venue. Really stoked to be back. But yeah, this is really cool. Thank you guys for coming. Looking forward to this conversation and really about where are we at, guys. It's 2023. We've gone through a lot since Prop 64 started. A lot. So a lot of this panel discussion has really excited me because we got some killers up here. Guys that have been doing this for a long time. Medicinal, rec. What's really keeping businesses going though? It's mindset. It's best practices. What are the things that we do behaviorally that we really want to focus on? We're going to get into it. So we thought we'd start off with the topics with a couple of things here. First, I'm going to introduce our panelists. Starting out with Mr. Eric Brandstad. Eric, thanks so much for joining us, man. Appreciate you being here. You want to give us a quick bio, super high level, a little bit about yourself?
Hello. My name's Eric Brandstad, and I'm a fourth generation farmer originally from San Joaquin County, but I moved to Humboldt when I graduated high school in 1992 and subsequently moved to Grass Valley in 1999, and right around 2006 I was with the first light deck greenhouse company called Forever Flowering Greenhouses, and I managed that for 11 years, and I left in 2018 and started my own consulting company, and so I consult in over 7 or 8 states in the last 4 years, and MSOs to small farms and organic, solid, you name it. And greenhouses is kind of my thing, but I also do indoor. I appreciate you having me.
For sure, man. We're stoked that you're here with the Connect community. Ultimately, man, you are a solution-oriented cultivator. You find the issue, you find solutions. So thank you so much for coming here tonight, man. Really appreciate you being on the panel. Mr. Matt Trichome, Kevin Crouch.
What's up? My name is Kevin Crouch. I've been growing cannabis for 22 years. I did marine and wildlife biology for 15 years prior to jumping into commercial. I always had some sort of R&D experiment going with cannabis at home or wherever else. I've been growing double stacked LED for the last almost 4 years, almost 1,400 lights, 1180 flowering. High plant count, lots of fun.
Yeah, something that has really impressed me is your ability to understand heat stratification in a double stack environment. Going through all of that stuff, and I know we're going to dive into that with best practices, but it's incredible what Kevin's been able to do in that double stack room. So, thanks for being here, Kev.
Per light, I've a whole facility. Probably, I've done 36. That's probably the most. We have around 20 to 25 is sweet spot. The whole facility. I think flowering about 30,000, 27 to 30,000, somewhere in that ballpark.
So he knows a thing or two about emitters. All right. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate you being here, man. Mr. Joe Semino.
Hey guys, my name is Joe Semino, Good Greens. I'm the rookie here, up here. I've only been cultivating, I guess at this point, for a little over a decade, 12 years. My first at a Prop 64 grow, not that far from here, ironically enough. So I guess that was my first big foray into cannabis. But based in LA right now, I've got a facility opening up in Massachusetts, hopefully before the end of this year. So we'll work that.
Appreciate you, Joe. So, a little history. Joe was the first one that introduced crop steering to me. And it was really unique to see our genetics and cultivated completely throwing down at Joe's spot. What are you doing, man? He pointed over there. He's like, see those sensors? Crop steering. So, we'll get more into crop steering. And shout out to Aloya for being a Connect community sponsor. Appreciate you guys. All right, so one of the main things that we've all learned as we've been evolving throughout the industry. Supplier partnerships and how our relationships have gotten us to the level of the game that we're at right now. A little context, a little color for the panelists to start thinking about. We all came from a different background, right? Some of us may have gone to school to educate ourselves on horticulture, some of us may not. So we don't really know what we don't know until we experience it. So as our journey has progressed, we've learned more about, IPM. We've learned more about pathogens. We've learned more about all these different solutions and challenges that we've come across as commercial cultivators. How important is that as you start to go through your journey? Who wants to start?
Yeah, especially when you start out, I think it's the most important because if you don't know anything, you're going to rely on your hydro shop to really teach you what you need to know. You're on the forums, depending on how old you are. That's where I was at. The forums are where everything was at. So, yeah, it's hugely important to trust who you're asking the questions and answers. So it's in SAC, we have some great hydro shops. We're a big market. So you have Kevin here, and me and him, we're always talking. We're always bouncing things off, and I'll ask him a question. He'll tell me his years. He's seen everything. You go to somebody like Kevin. He's probably seen every scenario. A hydro shop owner that's involved with grows or is knowledgeable and has passion for it, which is a huge part here. And somebody like him, he does. So you can bounce things off. And I think wherever you probably go, you have a hydro shop that's very similar and helps to build that passion as well to it. So
you touched on something very important. You're going to your supplier that pretty much provides you with about 75% or more of the supplies that you use to cultivate. So now when you ask a question about a problem that you're encountering, what are those obstacles, right? How are those supplier partners and those relationships evolved from visiting your hydro store or just anybody in general?
And I think it's gotten better over time because we have less hydro shops. Unfortunately, there's been a consolidation and things slowing down. But at the same time, the shops that are still around have higher quality people because there was a time when things were really big that some of the hydro shops, it was like a bud tender. They were selling a product that was the best margin or trying to sell what their favorite thing was or something like that. Now I think it's really down to some more experienced, knowledgeable people that we're dealing with at the hydro shops. But beyond that too, I like to deal with the highest level people that I can find. And being from the community originally, being here, this community event is full of all kinds of cool people. I haven't met everybody here, but I mean, you see the Miami Mango walking around. My homie Bam over here is an elite breeder, and I've known for many years. James Loud's walking around out here. I mean, there's really impressive that these little community events pop out. And so if you're not talking to these people and trying to build rapport, that's why we're here. Meet somebody you haven't. Go up to say somebody that you haven't talked to before, and you'd be surprised at the quality of people that you run into at these community events. There's always the industry exists, but the community is the core and really where things get done. And I think some of the best abilities to leverage smart people, because in these big facilities, if you're buying a lot of product, you want to make sure that the products you're buying, if they're buying direct from a fertilizer company or a breeder, that you have a good relationship. You're trying to build rapport. The labs that we have up here, really great people, and you want to build a relationship with the lab. You don't just want to send in a sample and get a report back. It goes for everything. With nutrient companies, I like to work with the nutrient companies that have worked in big greenhouses because that's what I deal with. And I have a lot of knowledge in that. And so I'm not the smartest guy walking around, but I try to rely on all the smartest people I know through my connections. I call Sergio when I need some genetic work. I've called them at various states and companies and things like that because I can trust them and I know that they put out good work, and the companies that they work with are also highly reputable. It's not just their word on it. It happens to be a lot of people's word on it. You just have to ask around and talk. And so leveraging these people is really important to get some of the best advice to make some of the decisions that are really high level. And unfortunately, I see a lot of lower level high-level people having low-level people do some of the high-level work, let's say. So it's really important to leverage all the relationships that you can with some of the smartest people in these companies, these individuals, and things like that.
And that's a really good point. I want to piggyback onto the fact that the community is helping each other. So I know emerging markets, as cannabis comes along online in your market, find your hydro store, build a community. I can't tell you how valuable this is to have people in this room that we can literally have a conversation about any sort of challenge that we're going through, whether it's pest or pathogen or drip emitter. We can ask, building that rapport with your community support, you guys. So really, really stoked that you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on what Eric was saying about leveraging relationships, you know, I think especially in cannabis, so much of it, your network is so valuable. Who you can call if you have a specific issue, or, you know, there's so many different things that can pop up. The other day I connected Kirk with somebody over like a small internet issue. It immediately gets resolved. So it's so important to have good relationships with these people and really, you know, again, it's relaying that really valuable information oftentimes, you know, saves a lot of headaches.
I want to throw in one thing real quick on best practices and making the relationships. So I also look out for how things kind of fall apart or not the best relationships sometimes. We're talking about all the good, warm, fuzzy stuff, but at the same time, what I notice at the bigger facilities and places I go throughout the state with a lot of these companies, they're always there to set things up, they're always there to plug it in, they're always there to sell you the product, but they're not there when the shit's hitting the fan. They're not always there when maybe things aren't working. So the relationship is really leveraging people that are going to be there for you when the shit is hitting the fan, when things aren't necessarily going right, or we're not able to dial something in. We want those people to be there because they were sure there the day you were signing the check or, you know, signing the invoice or things like that. They were there the day you received the products and you could set it up or whatever it is. But again, if they're not there for the follow through and when things really get thick, then it's probably not the best relationship.
I know that I started to realize how important that was, Eric, when my HVAC went out. Who the hell? Yeah, who do you call when your HVAC's out and the guy that installed it isn't answering your call? Moving on to the next topic of intake protocols. And guys, this just really just boils down to responsibility, right? You can't put blame of something on that is in your possession, your farm, on somebody else. There's protocols. There's things that you need to do to be responsible. And I'm going to speak from a nursery propagation guy. It's important to trust that you're getting clean genetics or healthy genetics, but verify it. Validate it, quarantine it, test it. If the nursery that you're working with or the TC lab that you're working with, if they're not able to stand up and be able to help you through a problem, if you encounter a problem, well, you should probably reconsider who your partner is in that side of the work. What I want to talk about real quick, though, is really important because we have to take care of these plants as they come in our facility, right? Even if you're popping beans, shit, man. I'll believe you can transmit through a seed coat, right? I know I've heard percentages anywhere between 10 and 20%. Thyroid's real. So, again, just not speaking from a clone perspective, there's a lot of things that we can do. And Joe, I know you and I have spoken about this in depth. Kevin, you and I have dealt with this in depth because I had delivered unhealthy material to you at some point when you called me. You actually reached out and you're like, hey man, you should know about this. You know, we have issues. Let's figure out how are you dealing with this? And that's going back to what Eric was talking about. We need to understand the challenges that we're going through so we can fix them together. That is called professional maturity. All right, this industry needs to professionally mature. And as we go through these challenges together, we're going to turn into experts of knowing who to call. And guys, that's going to be very important so we can take accountability for a lot of things and fix them. So I'll go and start that off, and I'm going to go off my soapbox, guys.
Yeah, I think what Sergio was talking about in inputting genetics. I think there's two parts. You know, it really depends on what facility you have. You know, I have a large facility. You know, my quarantine is a bit different because if I'm bringing a whole room in, I'm bringing 3,000 plants. How can I really quarantine plants if I'm trying to get them in the ground the next day. You know, so it's more of a investigative reaction protocol, which is how I deal with it, which is you have to be aware of what you're looking at. So having knowledgeable people to be able to identify a bug, a pathogen, PM, and that's both naked eye, it's also with a microscope. So we all know, if you've ever dealt with russets or broads, you're not going to see those with a naked eye on the clone.
So again, let's unpack that. We need tools, right? You can't just look at something and say it's clean. What kind of tools are we talking about? What kind of microscopes? What kind of loops are we talking about here?
Like a dyno light is what I like. Something very easy. A loop's great, but you have a little bit of money, get a dyno light. And it's just something you can hook up to your phone and take cool pictures and videos. And it's also, you can share those with whoever's providing you the clones as evidence. Not that they're going to fight what you're saying, but if you're like, hey, I see russets, they might be like, oh, I didn't see russets when I gave them to you. And so, guess what? Take a video or a photo and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing.
It's pretty easy to bring stuff home or take stuff from home back to the farm, so it's definitely controversial on that side of quarantining yourself and things in order to avoid one or the other. However, this hop thing's everywhere. Like everybody's taking clones across the states, and it's all over the place. Everywhere I've been, it seems like I'm showing up at everybody's bad luck moment or calamity of shit going down because I've seen the tissue cultures come with the hop. I've seen the farms replace stuff that was hop with hermed out stuff, and just everything you can imagine some of these farms have dealt with and trying to get out of this. And so it is tricky, and there are a lot of quarantine cross-contamination protocols that we rely on for the big nurseries and the tissue culture labs and everybody to do their job perfectly right every time so we can try to get out of this, but it's extremely difficult. And what I found is it definitely does come in waves, and nobody's like safe from it or immune from it, but you have to know how to deal with it. So I always like to have a plan A and a plan B in place. And what that looks like is different from farm to farm, but usually people are going with a plan A and even a plan C sometimes. And I've even had help from somebody here with a plan C with the feminized seed project one time because we couldn't find one nursery at that time in that year that didn't have some problem with something. And so it's devastating for farms that do rely on nurseries. And so the idea to get your own breeding project or your own in-house nursery is great, but that isn't always going to work either unless everybody does their job. And so being able to deal with lots of people to make sure they change their gloves and clean their scissors and do all these things can be extremely difficult too. And so I found that when you sit back and audit these things, you can really see the mistakes. And so it's unfortunate, but you almost have to police things up and down like some kind of drill sergeant to keep an eye on some of these most sensitive areas. It's just, the quarantine in some places is extreme, and the cross-contamination is really easy to do. So,
I think a big part of this boils down to taking responsibility for what happens inside of your own four walls, because the reality is taking in genetics, giving out genetics, pests and pathogens are going to travel. And, Kevin, I think he's a great reactionary IPM. I know you've dealt with a lot of issues. I've dealt with a lot of issues. At a certain point, I think we have solutions for it. So these aren't necessarily as intimidating or scary. And again, this just goes back to, I've had bad Cobalatin episodes, and I totally reworked, my clone, my mother stock, and literally my procedures on how I treat those plants and touch plants. So, but again, I've been given everything by, every clone I've been given, it's just part of it. But again, things happen. You can't say, this clone gave me PM. It's like, PM is everywhere. It's, environmental solutions, it's all sorts of different issues. But I think as growers, we have to take responsibility for what's going on inside of our grow. It's a big mindset thing.
Having a plan A, B, and C, right? Redundancy.
The yeast and mold too is getting you, depending on what state you're in.
IPM too. I know we didn't really touch too heavily on IPM, but you know, having a dip. If you aren't working with nursery, you do put in exterior genetics. Have some sort of a dip protocol, because again, even if you're scoping stuff, like if you're scoping 3,000 plants, it's unrealistic. But if you're going through and really homogenizing the test or the scope, make sure that you possibly do. If you know that you're working with a reliable, trustworthy nursery, there's going to be communication around. Hey, we're dealing with a little bit of thrips. We're dealing with a little bit of fungus gnats. Like, be cautious. Okay, well, appreciate the heads up, man. If somebody calls and tells you they got root aphids, what do you do then? But you really need to fill that room because you're on the cycle. What do you do then, right?
Run.
Burn it. Burn the plant in the ground.
And if you look back at the last slide, what the collaboration aspect of, we definitely touched on the companies and the nutrients and the leveraging the people on the outside that we pay a lot of money for their products, and we want to be able to get more than just the product. We want the insight. But when you talk about collaborative efforts, it's also in-house on the farm. A lot of farms like to divide up things into departments, but the way I see it, that everybody's in it for the same goal. And so when it comes to even IPM, the collaborative effort there is that everybody gets a jeweler's loop. A lot of the companies like Coburg and Bioworks send out plastic jeweler loops that fold out and open, and they'll send you 100 of them if you want for free. And basically, the people tagging them for metric, if it's a different department, they get a jeweler's loop. It's the people going in to do the pruning. Somebody in there, if not everybody, can have a jeweler's loop. So everybody's taking a look at the plants. And if you ask somebody sometimes, they'll tell you, oh, there's something over here, but we kind of leave this into this compartmentalized department thing when really it's everybody's job. And I don't remember the quote, but Miami Mango has something on his wall about everybody. It's not just your job, it's everybody's job, or something he posted one time. I forget how it went, but it was super cool. And I think that's really important because we all are in this together. It's not just your job and my job. It's all our jobs to get this shit done. And we might be in different departments, but we're still growing the same plant together. So collaborative efforts in-house to help each other is really important.
There should not be silos in cultivation. Everything should be synergized. The effective communicators understand that there's a way to approach a challenge or an opportunity working with another department. Right? What does that look like? How do you talk to somebody when there's an issue? How do you address something? Just being a human, right? It's very important to be able to go down the rabbit hole very quickly if there's a problem, because you don't want to take responsibility for something that you know the responsibility was had. So being able to effectively communicate that, guys, is so important to removing these silos within your operations.
Yeah, going into a lot of different cultivation facilities throughout the country, one of the things I see consistently in good operations is good culture, good employee culture, good management. It has become so critical because producing good products, so much of it is about care, attention to detail. And if you have people that don't want to be there, that don't care about the product, you're spending all this time, money, really time, a crop from time you cut a clone to the time you have dry trimmed flowers, like 3-4 months. For people not to care at so many different points along that way, quality starts to drop off. And again, one of the biggest things is it's good employees.
I think we all prune, and I think your pruners are infantrymen. They're the ones that are going to see any sort of problem that you have. They're the first ones, probably before I will see it. So you train them well, and if they're happy, and they're happy to produce a product for you, they're probably going to do a better job at finding bugs, herbs, PM, whatever it may be. They're going to take pride in what they're doing. So I think, like what Joe said, is it's important to treat them well and make them appreciate. You appreciate them, and they also appreciate the flower that's coming over there.
It's incentivization for these small identifications for something to speak of, right? I mean, that's culture, right? You want to celebrate the medial tasks that are going to create the biggest impact. I can't stress it enough, guys. People want to do the work when they get appreciated. It's that simple. And we all work for our people. I mean, at the end of the day, leadership and cultivation starts with us. be able to do the dirty work. And if you can't appreciate the dirty work being done, what happens to quality, Joe? Cultivation, mindset, expectations. And I think this has been like, we've been talking about this throughout the entire discussion, but this is the crux of a make or break operation and really what develops into a culture. Once you get started off here.
Yeah, when you're trying to drive the culture, it's really important to walk the walk and talk the talk. And so for me, whether it's a department or working with the entire farm in different departments at the same time, and I'm actually hands-on. There's some that I spend a lot of time at, whether it's on site consistently over a few months or if it's every other week, whatever it is. But I want to top more plants than anybody else. I want to scout and find more bugs than anybody. When they say there isn't any, I'm going to go find where they are. I want to do more than whatever. I want to spray more bays than someone else can do. I want to do the most I can do to really show the level that you can rise to, because a lot of people have a clock in and clock out mentality and stuff, and there isn't the passion there. It's really hard. A lot of these farms have cool, facilities and cool stuff, and it's really a great place to work. I really look at stuff that I've done in California and even in the Salinas Valley. You can be in one greenhouse facility that's paved and sidewalks, and when it rains, you're not in the mud. You can wear tennis shoes to work, and really clean bathrooms all the time. And you can go to other farms where it's in the mud and the dirt, and the places are flooding, and there are outhouses or porta potties that you got to use and stuff like that. But it's the same job, the same pay, the same area, the same cannabis. And so people don't really realize how good they have it at some of these facilities in some ways. They're really clean, nice places with, vending machines, whatever they have. And some of them even have gigs after work to get together or whatever it is, because they're really trying to build that rapport and that community spirit. But a lot of times it doesn't always work. It's really tough to get the mindset. I went to a job site in Utah one time to a greenhouse facility, and I never talked about the greenhouse once because everybody that came up to me vented the whole time. This is going wrong because of this person and that person, and the next person pulls me aside. It's that person, it's this, it's that person. And then somebody, can I take you to dinner? And yeah, so we go to dinner. Hey, it's all fucked up because of this, that, and the other. And so I never talked about greenhouses once the entire time I was there. No cultivation. I'm not a therapist. I didn't get there to be therapy, but that's the culture. It can get really fucked up, and when it is, the plants shut.
Yes. Yes. I think as I'm a director of cultivation, right, and I'm not the owner of the facility, but as the director of cultivation, it's a whole separate gig. And I think you don't control the money. You're in charge of instructing everybody and trying to build that culture. So for me, I think, or anybody in a position that's this way, not that I'm doing it 100% right, but I think education and making people feel important and training them as best as you can will help build that culture. And so whether it be how to scout for a bud, show a bud, or okay, this is a herd, whatever you can teach, and they grasp something from that that's other than money, it'll help them it'll help them internally build that culture, whether it's not whether or not it's money or not. So they're gonna want to come to work because they're learning, and if you have passion for whatever you're doing, you're gonna want to learn. And so that's kind of my take. It's not the money man, but the guy that tries to build that.
Yeah, if you miss one important thing, and probably one of your biggest positive qualities is being approachable. You have to be approachable in this gig, right? Being a director of cultivation, you're not the one that's always going to be doing the dirty work, but you want to be involved in the process, but you have to be able to communicate. Talk a little bit about the director role of cultivation.
Yeah, it's really an open book, is what you are. That's how I take it. And if somebody's working for me, I'm definitely not going to be upset if they go somewhere else and they take what tools I taught them. And you can't hold that to yourself. To me, you have to let that out. And whether they want to learn, the people that want to learn, you'll notice immediately. They'll come right to you and they're going to ask questions, but they're going to ask thoughtful questions, not And so it's really providing that education. That's really all and guidance, obviously, and respect. For me, that's probably the biggest thing is respect in all life, but obviously job is really what matters.
You touched on something, Kev, that made me think about the way our interactions are, and that's how you educate. Like you probe me. You're not just going to give me the answer. You're going to challenge me to critically think about what the answer actually is. That's a good leader, right? I don't just want to tell you yes or no because that doesn't allow you to actually figure it out for yourself. But want to build people up on the team. So I think that's one of those most critical roles as I've gone around multiple different farms and seen the strong leadership. Right? You're approachable. You're a good human that people want to speak to.
Yeah, and really quick, something else that's really basic, but I think it's not really done as much as it should be, is giving thanks. You know, if you're in a facility and somebody does an amazing job pruning, or they find a bug, or they find something, you should be really thankful because they just stopped the problem. And it's really not passed around as much as it should be. But I think just giving thanks to your employees.
Your moment, recognition, gratitude. You're grateful to work with this beautiful plant. Think about this real quick. Like you're touching something very cool, and we never really thought about it. We're kind of spoiled here in this Sacramento area because we have some badass facilities. Yes, Alex, I'm looking at you. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things that we take for granted when you go out into the farm and you have a muddy pit that you have to walk through. It's cold, right? Gotta be grateful. So, very cool. Any final thoughts on this particular topic before we move on?
I think being accountable is really hard for people to do in all levels, and that's why, like he's saying, you got to be approachable, lead with integrity, and be able to deal with the shitty news that's going to be coming. And it comes a lot of times, and so being accountable is super important. I know I've fucked up in my work quite a bit, and I've had to be accountable for it. I mean, I made a disaster one time in Salinas at a huge nursery. Quick story, just kind of how you can fuck up sometimes. I was at a farm in Greenfield up the road from Salinas, not too far, and we used to mix for a pesticide that was a couple products together at certain rates and certain times. And so I thought, okay, I'm in Salinas, we're gonna bring this recipe that I learned over here and use it and have the success I was using just 30 minutes up the road. And so I said, wait till I get there before you mix it up. We're gonna do it at this time, these rates, blah, blah, blah. I got there, everything was already mixed up and they're spraying away. Unfortunately in Salinas that day, it didn't stay foggy until 10 like it's supposed to and the sun came up. But every plant in that room was so fried that honestly I walked in on Monday and the CEO, the COO, this guy they're interviewing for cultivation, head of cultivation's in there, and the consultant guy that came in and fried the entire nursery. I mean, the plants had phytotoxicity so bad, all you saw was the veins. There was no leaf material. You were looking right through them. I was like, holy shit. Luckily, I was talking about the calamity of things that could have happened that contributed to this. The people were actually on my side about the whole thing and agreed with me, and the guy that they were interviewing was totally, understanding what happened. But a lot of these farms have tours throughout the day, sales and packaging and people comment, and it's a fucking shit show sometimes. And so you sometimes got to direct where people go, because if things aren't going good over there, you go, I'll take a tour over there. And so of course they drag them through the nursery, and it's like, have you looked at your plants? They're fried as fuck, and everybody's like, and they're pointing to me, like, hey, that guy over there, the consultant and shit. I'm like, what the fuck? And so I actually went into thousands of plants one day and I pulled every leaf off that was fucked up, because the plants actually were recuperating and coming back. It set them back probably 7-8 days, but they bounced back and were just fine. But in the meantime, I went through every plant by myself in this entire nursery till night and day to pick off every fucked up leaf, so that when someone walked through, they didn't go, what's this and what's that, just to take some of the heat off, because it was a bad situation. But I made it through, stayed there for 7 months, had great success with other things at the project, and you can go to any of the farms that I worked with and they're still in business. It's not just because of me. And integrity, good rapport. You're not going to hear some fucked up shit about me late at night at the trade shows or some other shit or whatever. Like, that's how I've made it as far as I have. You can't fuck up on the side, in the social, or in the mix, because this industry doesn't forget. Community doesn't forget.
Facts right there. A little round of applause here for the panelists, guys. Thank you. So now, guys, we're going to open up the Q&A. The table is yours. I mean, you guys have a wealth of knowledge up here, and if there's anything that's been on your minds, any particular part of the grow, or any sort of steps that you want to start to get into, anybody have any questions that they'd like to start off with? Sir, name and where you're from.
My name's Tyler. I'm with Grassroots Fiber Pots. I do a lot of living soil stuff, large raised beds, bottomless pots, do a lot of cool stuff on the living soil side of things. I want to know when you guys have this employee that comes to you and has this problem and spots this little problem, say it's a russet mite, it's a broad mite. Are you guys specifically going to just treat that area, that little spot, that little plant, or are we treating everything at that point? How massive are we going to alter our plan at that point when we have an issue that needs to be addressed?
I think it goes, you have to scout first, so you isolate where they found it, and then you scout from there. But generally, I would put preventative measures in place immediately. I think the size of my facility, with all the SOPs, the size of my facility, we've had very little outside infiltration by employees. We don't have a lot of growers, so I think you also kind of have to look at your employees. Is that employee that was pruning, or whoever showed you, is he a grower? Because you haven't farmed before, so you probably want to ask questions, and you don't know, and see what his background is or their background, and then go from there. I would generally at least implement whatever room that's in, and what you implement depends on what day you're on, things like that. But if it's in the room, I'm going to treat the room for sure, and then I'll go back from there and try to trace it.
Especially if we're talking about clones, right? We're going to go back to mumps. And
Let's say you have employees that are growers as well. Do you guys pass on, obviously, you're trying to teach them as well, but are you passing on a lot of that? Okay, this could have came from you, go home and treat it this way, or do this as well?
Absolutely. In fact, the only time I think we've had something that didn't come from a nursery was from an employee. Now that I think about it, it was probably 2 years ago, and it was pretty obvious. And told him not to treat him, treat it as well. And I think that's really what you need to do, because if they're going to be back in your room, no, actually he plays a pretty important role. But yeah, he did feel bad, and he immediately went home and treated everything. Yeah, I think educating any of your growers, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. If you're educating generally, and they are a grower, a lot of people that work in cultivations might want to grow and want to learn. So if you're teaching them, then they're going to probably have cleaning practices too, and better practices. So they're going to come to the facilities. So it goes back to education.
Employee weed can be the best weed sometimes. But my favorite thing to do is sulfur, especially in veg, not in the flowering, but sometimes it does happen, but it can be controversial from farm to farm, place to place, county to county, regulatory body to regulatory body. But
you mean it's a terpene enhancer, right?
yeah, but most plants are deficient in some ways because it helps with the powdery mildew, the russet and broads, it kills them, and so having a steady regimen in veg, a lot of people are scared because they use oils and things like that, so there are some protocols to follow because you can use both, but it can be tricky at the same time. But I found if I stick with that, especially bringing in outside stuff all the time, it just, you avoid that wave. You're always riding some kind of wave with some of these things. And so I found with any farm that brings in outside plants from the big nurseries that sulfur is kind of a key to the program.
We're talking nitrogen sulfur. lettable sulfur.
Yep, it's in a powder form. Get it wet, put it in a spray rig, keep it agitated.
Nice dosage rates, 8 to 10 mil or 8 to 10 grams per gallon is what I've been seeing.
Yeah, I mean, normally on the bigger sprayers in the greenhouses, we're doing what would be equivalent to 1 to 3 pounds per 100 gallons. 3 pounds is on the higher rate, so I tend to stay with 3 pounds per 100 gallons. And a lot of times we'll mix it with kelp. So, I mean, it is good to rinse off the residue a few days later, but mixing it with kelp is always good, or washing it off with kelp can be a good way to do it sometimes. So some of these products can be mixed up with other things to make it better, or use something cool to wash it off with. So I don't always just use clear water.
Is it necessary to have a surfactant with it if you want the best efficacy?
It helps. I haven't seen it be a deal maker or deal breaker. I've seen a lot of people that just are into it and want to do it that way, and other farms that don't. And I see the same benefit as far as prolonged protection from powdery mildew and the ability to keep off the broads and resin mites.
Kevin, with the quick math, it's 13.5 grams per gallon.
Good looking at that. Appreciate
That's a director.
Exactly. Problem solved. Great conversion. Sulfur is great. I mean, we've been spraying our clones with sulfur before they go out for over 2.5 years now. And putting them in a box, they go through some crazy climate changes all throughout California. Sulfur is a game changer. And that's why I kind of talked about dips earlier, right? Sulfur as a dip, even just as a preventative, really, really powerful stuff to take care of a lot of those mites that you can't see.
I think a big part too is, it's about the bigger picture. In traditional ag, you have pest pressure in the fields. We want to live in this world where we're running as sterile environments as we imagine, but pest pressure definitely comes in waves. And again, start to deal with pest pressure it comes down to having SOPs where you're trying to prevent it as much as possible. Or, when things do flare up, you have effectively protocols you take to mitigate it. Whether, again, it all depends on. So I think a big part of it comes down to mindset and the bigger picture, where a lot of the way that we're operating is designed in a way to minimize damage, I guess, in a lot of ways, or prevent a lot of these bigger issues that can really hurt. You have total crop failure, some instances. So, I think that's a big piece of it.
You're completely right, Joe, because when you start to have the preventatives in place, you start to adjust those preventatives that you have in place because it's not working, or you correct it. Maybe you have too many good solutions. And I forgot what, I believe it was Matthew Gates that posted this the other day, and he put 2 predator mites out there, and one of the predator mites was eating the other predator mite, so it was basically leaving the aphids to do their thing. So sometimes do less and adjust. Micro changes for big results.
I think also the pest pressure, catering to what your most likely pest is. You don't have to necessarily kill them all in one dip or one spray, but knowing what your likely pest is and catering to that either with a dip or spray. Because there's definitely certain things you want to do for thrips and certain things you want to do for russets and rods and certain things you want to do for spiders. So.
It's a great question. Thank you. You got more?
Somebody else ask a question.
You guys have a question before time is ending?
Come on, guys. Dealing with a lot of growers and having them do tissue testing and sap testing, looking at what the plant is uptaking from the nutrients that it's receiving. Are you guys doing any of those things on that level in your facility to change or alter some of the nutrients you're doing? Tissue or sap testing specifically?
Where I'm seeing it, look, it depends on the sophistication of the operation is one thing. And the second thing is when an operation is pretty consistent, it's humming along, so to speak, I think I see it being used most often to check overall plant health. I think it gets hard, especially to scale when a lot of systems start to become so dynamic. Where I like to keep things as simple as possible personally. So I've messed up a lot, and the more complicated things get, the more I tend to mess up. So starting, I get nervous about changing nutrients to adjust. But again, I'm looking at it more so as a test, like a double check, I guess, to make sure that we're walking out is doing well.
I think kind of depends on the facility too, indoor, outdoor. But I also, if you think you have a problem, I mean, it's probably, there's two ways. You can do preventative testing, or we run 10 different, 10, we use 10 different, we generally have maybe 10 different strains in the facility, or in the room, and one strain may show deficiencies in the rest of the 9 impression. And so I think, depending on the size, it's more, instead of testing that, you're probably just going to eliminate that strain, honestly. I hate to say it, if you have a program that works for 9 of them, you're not going to keep that one individual. So I think, you kind of cater your testing depending on what you're trying to do, preventative, problem solving.
And I do want to throw out like Arbor Plant Labs. We just did a panel with them last month, and you're exactly right. Like, who is actually implementing this type of technology? Who's using this testing for preventative measures? Right. Just like the blood test.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because some of the farms I've dealt with try to do these walks, and like doctors do, they go room to room and see the patients and shit. But I mean, the difference is they're looking at lab reports and fucking blood work and all this shit. You're just walking around going, I think it's this, and I think it's that, and maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. And for me, a lot of the farms that I've worked with that are having a really tough time, we did NPK testing on the recipe every 2 weeks. We did plant tissue once a month, and we did the substrates every time something new came in. So it was a new pallet, new truckload, or whatever, so we could get as close as we could to the chemistry being accurate for the plants. And then you have to deal with the shot sizes and the amount of irrigation and all. That's a different story, but it does tell a lot because those things change over time. Dealing with well water, RO water, things like that, it's really, at first you kind of go heavy and hard, and then you can start to back off a tiny bit. But I had the most success even in Florida working with MedMen of all people. Like, they did testing and turned shit around so fast, they grew more weed, had to open up 3 more stores at the time, and it was just because of the testing. They didn't realize at the time, when you look at the plants, most of us that have grown a long time, we look at the plants and say, oh, it needs some calcium, magnesium type of thing, and some purpling on the stems. But in fact, because of the well water and the fact there was so much shale or shell and limestone, that the water was full of calcium. So there was no need to have any calcium whatsoever in the recipe. And once we cut all that out and let the well water do its thing, it made a huge difference because a bunch of other stuff was locked out. And so they didn't know that for the however many years they were working there until we did a couple lab tests, and boom, like, that's really all it took.
Regardless if it's a leaf tissue, a sap sample, or pathogens, you can't manage without measuring. That's the I'm a data guy. I love to use my intuition if I recognize something, but I also want to look at data to confirm that or validate my intuition's off.
Just to keep it community real quick, Tyler from Grassroots Fabric Pots does need a little mention because he threw an event this last year up in Nevada City called the Soil Life Summit. He had about 5 different labs and great speakers all talking about different testing from the general lab testing to the SAP testing and all these different labs. The chief science officers of all these companies were there, so we were really hearing like the stuff from the horse's mouth and all the popular labs and different variations and even microbiology people that were testing things, and so like really covered the spectrum, and it did bring a lot of people together. So I hope we do have that event again sometime, and it was definitely beneficial for me because I learned a lot about different labs. The New Age Laboratories in Michigan that does the SAP testing, super, super cool give you values with small leaves, big leaves. I mean, complete info that like blew my mind really on the SAP side of things, because a lot of people aren't into the SAP side of the testing. It can be controversial. Who you talk to, Suzanne Bumday or somebody will throw something and be like, doesn't exist, nobody does that. A lot of people are against it, even though we all play in the same field. So I really appreciated that. I'm going to give Soil Life Summit for grassroots a shout. But yeah,
Respect. I love that. And for anybody watching this, and for future panels, yes, start a round of applause. That's what we want to do, right? We had a cool engagement with Salt Wars a few months back. And we had HGV, we had Advance, we had GH, we had House and Gardens up on a panel just talking perspective. That's what it's about, right? Let's talk about the perspective of our solutions so we can help identify what's going to work best for us. We each have unique farms, right? One thing is not the right thing for everybody. And I think that's what's great about this community is that we're willing to help. We're willing to give ourselves perspectives. Thank you. What other questions?
There's got to be a question.
Right here. Name and where you're from.
Raceway, Sacramento. I need a little controversial. Thoughts on the industry now and where it's going?
From a cultivation perspective.
It depends on where you are. I mean, California's always been kind of on the forefront, I feel like, and there's a lot of people that left California to go to other states and turn things up a little bit. And so everybody needs help, and all of us can do some learning. And so really, I mean, I feel like in some ways it's still kind of going in the same direction, even though everything's changed. A lot of us are still there for the plant. A lot of us are still trying to have dank weed in our pocket. A lot of us are still trying to pay our bills. Like, not a lot has changed, even though the landscape has completely reversed itself in some ways. And so it's surprising out there in the field. There's a lot of passionate people. There's a lot of people that have more passion than some of the OGs I know, because they're new to the game. They're ready to do this, and like I said, they got something to prove. And so those are the people to really look out for, because there are some up and comers. There's a lot of young generation out there that want to really learn and take this on and do good things. So I mean, I really, hopefully it's prosperous for everybody, but it's hard. I've been in this for so long in some ways, and I've always tried to predict the future and sat with people and talked with a lot of people in the industry and industry events, and I think most of us have been wrong. Like, nobody has had this shit figured out from day one, other than we just got to grow plants and we got to grow the heat in order to survive. And so it's, I think, become tougher than it's ever been to have those things happen. Things are at a bigger scale than they've ever been. So like the challenge is the same, but the outcome is a lot different. And hopefully we can pull it all together. Events like this, like I said, community-driven events, you can learn a lot of MJBizCon, but you won't get the quality of talks that you get at places like this. You won't get to meet a lot of people are in a hurry. You might meet some of the same people. It's like, yeah, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. And a quick move on and stuff. So here's a really good chance to get to know people and connect.
Great question. Joe?
I think as we move more and more towards federal legalization and effectively legalization internationally, scale starts to become a huge factor. It's a cost. And I think there's going to be more automation on the cultivation side. You're seeing hand watering. You're seeing like a lot of bigger facilities. You start to see reduced labor touch points as many places as possible. So, but again, this goes into the whole debate of craft versus scale. You lose a lot of love, a lot of care, and a lot of, you start to standardize that stuff to that point on a big scale, and the quality starts to suffer as a result of it. So, I think at the end of the day, there's always going to be a market for high quality flower. It's only going to be, I don't know how big it's going to be, but I don't think it's going away. At the end of the day, especially no matter what ups and downs in this market, quality is one of the consistent things that always sells. And so it can be hard to compete on price against people at scale, but they can't necessarily compete with your quality. So I think that's one big edge that we as smaller guys really have to embrace.
Yeah, exactly what Joe said, quality, and then I think the second most important thing is efficiency. I think those two words, you can take anything, in the future, you could have quality and efficient, every aspect, environmental, cost, labor, and that's where we'll be. And it's pretty much like any other business or commodity, unfortunately, but those two things are what's going on.
I'm going to take a cumulative approach here because these guys touch on something that really resonates with me. And at the end of the day, guys, we have to find what makes us happy. Are you in this business, this industry, because you're happy doing it? Are you afraid to clean shit up? We're just glorified janitors and cultivators. And if you can't accept that this is hard work, this is going to take a long fucking time, and if you don't have the right genetics, if you don't have the right supplier partners, you're going to fail. Straight up, we've seen so many millions of dollars just go down the drain on these massive build-outs, and they bring in the wrong people because they don't build culture, they don't build relationships, they're not approachable, they don't have strong leadership. So the emerging markets that are watching, if you guys do have the opportunity to watch this and listen to this on the podcast, wherever the hell it may be that you consume it, be happy doing what you're doing. And spread that love and gratitude for being able to work with this plant. That's going to get you fucking far. I can't stress it enough, guys. Just be grateful for the gift of working with this plant. That'll get you far. Thank you for the question. What are the questions?
If you have any other questions, you can always hit me up on the side. My website's greenhouseadvisory.com, and my Instagram is like.greenhouse with underscores in between. Shoot me a DM or hook up out here, exchange numbers. I'm always down to connect with people. And yeah, it's nice meeting some of the people I've met here already today.
We're stoked for you to make it out here. I think we'll definitely be coming back on a panel in the future, man. Appreciate you. Kevin, Joe, Eric, how about a round of applause for these guys? Again, shout out to Endorson Hydro. Kevin, we appreciate you as this factory, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's have some fun, guys. Let's connect. Thank you.